What is happening, traders? I hope you are good. Welcome to the first video in this three-part series where we're going to discuss the contraction phase in this video, the expansion phase in the next video, and the video after that, the trending phase. Doing the videos like this gives you some space and some time to go out there and just, draw these, map it out yourself. And then at the end, we'll be able to build a picture and a market map of how everything ties together with the Forex master pattern and the event chain. Now, when I first noticed this video, I came across it. I'm always looking for stuff to enhance what I'm doing, but most of the time I'm looking for subtraction. I'm always trying to simplify. And the event chain by itself works extremely well, as many of you know. But when I noticed this video and watched it, immediately I knew what was missing. It's like there was a gap somewhere in my being, but I didn't know that it existed until it made itself present. And the Forex master pattern synced with the event chain creates a holistic workflow of how to map the market, right? Because there's certain times when I'm looking at the market and I'm trying to understand what is actually happening in between those supply and demand zones. Why do we get pin bars like this? Why do we get the market just going sideways like this at points like this? Why? And this is the question that I guess allowed the universe to present me with the master pattern, because I don't usually go looking for any strategies to add, because as I said, I'm usually looking to subtract. But this made itself present to me, and as I said, as soon as I saw the video, immediately I knew it was powerful and it was going to help transform the way I trade. So as you can see here, ATS have managed to come up with a way to map the market. Okay, it's like a story unfolding, which allows you to stay out of the drama, being the banks and institutions liquidating positions to then get their orders filled. And it allows you to get in at the exciting part of the story, the thrilling part, the part that gets your heart racing, which is that trending phase. So you stay out of all the shit and only get in when it's good. And the way this market map works allows you to do that in such an amazing fashion. It's unbelievable. I'm still testing, still tweaking, still making wings, still getting losses. Okay, so it's in design, the way that I'm trying to fit this in with the event chain. But you'll see how this whole thing maps out and ties in with the event chain. And guys, you will not be disappointed. It does have a bit of a learning curve. Okay, it does have a bit of a learning curve, as does anything new. But if you can understand this, then you'll have a map and you'll know exactly what's happening when it's happening. And trust me, that is powerful. Okay, so I've actually taken this from the ATS video, and they describe this as the contraction phase, the setup, okay, which is basically caused by low institutional volume. It's when this happens, you'll see the market moving mostly sideways. Okay, now as ATS described, this is the setup, the natural movement of the market. It's not ATS's setup, it's not your setup, it's not my setup, it's the market's setup. So if the market is setting up, then you're setting up. Any ideas that you have about what's happening, as they say, is totally irrelevant. Now, let's just go on to the next slide, and you'll see how they draw this contraction phase, okay? And they call it a neutral belief zone, which kind of makes sense because everything is based on beliefs in the market, as we've learned time and time again. At the end of the day, fear makes people do stupid things. Greed makes people do stupid things, okay, on both ends of the scale. So when the market begins to range and the market begins to move out of this range, traders are seeing the market move. So their belief is, this is the market. It's now time to get in because the market's going up. But this is the average price, the belief zone. The traders' belief at this point that the market's going up. And this is where the smart money begins to sell. And then market begins to crash, begins to drop. And then traders on the other side of this think, shit, all right, now it's dropping, so let's get in on the downside. But then all this movement here is just the banks and institutions liquidating your position so they can actually get their orders filled. And then the actual move is right here as it moves to the upside. All of this stuff is a red herring. All right. So understanding this and putting this into action, two different things, but I've managed to discover a way that we can use this tied in with supply and demand zones with the master pattern to, get in on some amazing trades that not necessarily would even be possible, just using the event chain itself, because it allows you to see different areas and it allows you to stay out of a lot of shit as well. And that's the stuff that saves your account from getting blown up, right? So let's move on to the daily chart. I want to give you some examples here of the contraction phase. So here we are on GJ, which is the only market that I currently trade. Now, there are 3 contraction phases here, guys, right? 3 of them. And I want to see if you can recognize it, all right? Now, take a look we're going to start on the left-hand side here, and then we're going to go across. So if you look on the left-hand side, where do you think the contraction phase is? Remember, it's where the market begins to go sideways. There's a tightening of the market. Have you got it? All right, let's move on to the next slide. All right, so that's the first contraction phase. Where do you think the next contraction phase is, everyone? You got it? All right, let's move on. That's the next contraction phase on the daily. Now, this one is slightly more difficult to see, okay? But where do you think the next contraction phase is? The next daily contraction phase is here. Got it? All right, let's go. All right. So, it doesn't matter if you've got it wrong or not. That is totally irrelevant right now. It's just understanding the picture of what you're seeing. Okay, we can clearly see here that the market is starting to move sideways because we can see that it's got, now the way ATS draws them is that they actually draw from the wicks. I don't do that. I just simply draw from the bodies, as it makes things a lot cleaner, especially when you're on the charts and you're mapping the market as I do. So this is where the market, you can see that we've got a trend up, and the market just begins to go sideways. It's sideways movement here, sideways, and it's in this tight little area before it begins to break out and expand. Okay, and here again, just these tight these 3 daily candles, market begins to tighten up before it begins to expand. And again, and the expansion, shouldn't really get into this right now, but the expansion is anything that kind of breaks out of that zone, right? And there's no lagging, guys. It doesn't matter if the expansions, and the thing is, you have to wait for it to come out of there, all right, which is a lifesaver in actual fact. There is nothing that lags with this, all right? So again, this contraction zone, slightly more difficult to see, but we've got these candles just really close and tight together before we actually get an expansion outside of this particular contraction zone, all right? So let's go a bit deeper. Let's look at the same timeline, but on the H2 chart, all right? So we're looking for a contraction zone that is closest to price at this point in time. Now, I think on this chart, there are 4 contraction zones, guys. 4 of them. So where do you think the first contraction zone is? You got it? Let's take a look. So there's the first contraction zone. Where do you think the second contraction zone is, guys? Got it? There's the second one. Where do you think the third one is? Got it? You may be even be able to start to see the market map now. Now this one is a bit a bit more nuanced, but it is there. Can you see it? Let's take a look. Okay. Now, the whole point of this particular video is just so you can get an eye on what the structure can look like when it comes to contraction zones. Okay, just looking at the structure. Now, don't just watch this video and then forget about it until the next one. Take this structure, go and look for this structure on your own charts. And the way you know that if this structure is working out and you're drawing these contraction lines correctly is if the market comes into these structures and begins to pull back. Look, we've got a perfect, as we can see here, we've got a market moved into it, pulled back perfectly, then pushed through it, and as it pushed through, bounced, closed above, came back to this contraction line, went above. Okay, that's how you know that you've got these contraction zones, and the contraction line itself spot on. And you want to put your contraction lines in the middle, which is like 50% of the actual box itself. Now, TradingView has these tiny squares that actually pop up in the middle, so you just put it in the center of that, which is actually beautiful and makes life a hell of a lot easier. But that's all you have to do when it comes to these contraction zones. All right, just draw that line in the center and you're ready to go. So I hope that this has kind of like just given you insight into the contraction zones themselves. Make sure you take this away and then go and try and define them on your own charts and see if you can draw them up and see how the market reacts to them. Okay, and if you can do it live or you can back test it, do whatever you like. I haven't back tested this at all, but the reason why this video is taking so long, because as I was actually doing this, I was learning new stuff while I was doing it, and I was finding certain nuances, and I was like, oh, so that's why this has happened and that why that has happened and so forth. So sorry guys why this video is taking so long, because I'm actually learning stuff while I'm trying to teach you guys as well, which is pretty awesome. So make sure you stay tuned for the next video, because this is really where things get exciting. It's not even the trending phase. Like, understanding the expansion phase is absolutely critical. And this is where we tie things into supply and demand zones. And this is where we tie things in to the event chain. I'll see you in the next video.